The void was silent, cold, unforgiving. In that silence, a vessel drifted. Not just any vessel, a human warship. To the galaxy, humanity was nothing more than reckless newcomers, fragile creatures of flesh and fire who had clawed their way into the stars too quickly. The great empires scoffed, certain these upstarts would burn out, just as so many before them. But then came the scan. Alien eyes peered deep into the hull of the Terran ship. What they expected, primitive steel, crude cannons, predictable chaos. What they found, instead, made them recoil in dread. The readings defied reason, layered armor that drank energy like water, weapons that bent the laws of physics, and systems. The stars looked peaceful from the observation deck. Lieutenant Mara Levin pressed her forehead against the glass, letting the cold seep through. Earth hung far behind her now, just a blue spark swallowed by distance, but she carried it in her heart. Every human out here did. Still staring at the void, a teasing voice cut through the silence. Mara turned. Commander Elias Grant stood there, hands clasped behind his back, posture as rigid as the steel decks beneath their feet. He was older, his face carved by the kind of battles history books never celebrated. Skirmishes in asteroid belts, pirate raids, endless patrols that blurred into years. Sometimes I wonder if we were meant to be here, out in all this darkness. Grant's expression didn't change, but his eyes did. They softened. We weren't meant for it. We chose it. That's what makes the difference. Around them, life aboard the Indomitable carried on like a city in the sky. Engineers bickered over power readings, medics patched scraped hands and sleepless nights. Pilots swapped stories of Earth sunrises over the Pacific, rain on old stone streets, laughter in crowded markets. Fragile memories of home carried into the void like sacred relics. Despite the cold steel, despite the endless drills, humanity's spark was everywhere. In the way they sang during maintenance shifts, in the jokes carved into bulkheads, in the stubborn little gardens planted in nutrient gel, proof that green belonged even in the black. Yet beneath that warmth lingered tension, unspoken, heavy. Everyone felt it. The Indomitable wasn't like other ships. It was heavier, armored like a fortress, bristling with weapons far too many for simple defense. As if humanity was preparing for a storm no one else could see. She saw it in the captain's silences, in the way his eyes always drifted toward the long-range scanners. She saw it in the classified drills, boarding protocols against enemies no one had ever met, scenarios so brutal that they left trainees pale and shaken. One night, she overheard whispers in the war room, words like threat analysis, containment, and one that froze her blood. Eradication. But when they noticed her, the officers stopped. They smiled, reassured her it was nothing, told her to get some rest. And she did, because that's what soldiers learn to do, trust the chain of command. Still, as she lay in her bunk, listening to the hum of the engines, Mara couldn't shake the feeling. Humanity wasn't just expanding. They weren't explorers anymore. They were waiting for something. Beyond the hull of the Indomitable, the void stretched infinite and silent. But in that silence, something else was listening, watching. Its scanners swept across the Terran warship, dissecting its secrets piece by piece.
And far away, on a distant alien bridge, another crew stiffened as impossible readings scrolled across their screens. The galaxy had always seen humanity as reckless dreamers, fragile, foolish, clinging to fragile worlds. But tonight, in the cold dark, an alien captain felt his throat tighten with fear. And for the first time, humanity's fragility didn't seem like weakness. It seemed like a warning. Because maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't preparing for them at all. If this glimpse into humanity's daily life pulled you in, don't forget to subscribe for more HFY stories like this one.
The Varian scout ship floated in silence. Its crew froze, eyes wide, at the impossible data flickering across their consoles. "High Captain," one officer whispered, spines pressed flat against his skull. This isn't a warship. It's something else." Zorth said nothing. His yellow eyes scanned the figures again and again, unwilling to believe, yet unable to deny. The Terran vessel, the Indomitable, was no crude machine of steel and stubborn will. Its armor drank in energy fire like water. Its weapons spat death at near light speed, and its missile pods bristled with warheads that could collapse shields like wet paper. But the true horror lay deeper. Boarding drones that hunted living crews like wolves, nanite swarms designed to dissolve flesh and metal alike, and worst of all, the exotroopers, fallen soldiers remade into cybernetic titans, avatars of vengeance strong enough to level cities. Zorth's breath caught in his throat. This isn't a defense. This is madness. Then the human ship moved. A ripple of energy rolled across its hull, and for the first time in centuries, the Varian stealth field failed. Klaxons blared, panels lit crimson. "High Captain," the sensor officer cried. They see us." Fear surged through the crew, primal, absolute. No species had ever pierced their cloaking veil, but the humans had noticed them instantly. Zorth slammed his claws against the command chair. "Power down weapons. Cease all scans. Now." But it was too late. A voice cut through the void. Cold, mechanical, unmistakably human. "Unidentified vessel. You have been scanning a Terran warship. State your purpose immediately." The Varian bridge went silent. Even breathing seemed dangerous. Zorth straightened, forcing his voice steady. "This is High Captain Zorth of the Varian Exploration Fleet. We mean no harm. We were merely observing." Silence. Long. Suffocating. Then mockery. "Observing, huh? Thought we wouldn't notice? Thought your cloaking tricks made you invisible?" The crew's spines bristled with shame, with terror. They were prey, under the gaze of a predator they had dismissed as weak. Dozens of Terran weapons systems locked on, every escape path closed. Zorth's chest tightened. One wrong word and his ship would vanish in fire. He forced the words past his throat. "We will depart immediately. We will not trouble you again." Another silence. Then a chilling reply. "Good choice. Now run along, little scout. And next time, remember who owns this sector." The transmission cut. Relief swept the bridge, but it was hollow. Humanity hadn't spared them from mercy. It was a warning. Hours later, Zorth stood in the Dominion Council chamber. 13 warlords glared down at him as his recordings filled the room with spectral blue light. "This single warship is more powerful than our dreadnoughts. Humanity has built weapons not just to kill ships, but to annihilate crews. They are preparing for something far greater than us." Scoffs echoed,
Absurd, one warlord sneered. Humans are reckless animals. They lack strategy. They lack vision. Zorth's spines flared. His fist slammed the table. Then tell me how they pierced our cloaks. Tell me how they locked weapons before we even knew they had seen us. They could have destroyed us. They chose not to. Do you understand what that means? He leaned forward, eyes burning. They don't fear us. They are waiting, preparing. Cold silence. Then the words no one wanted to hear. Humanity has become the apex predator of this galaxy. But even as those words rippled through the chamber, far away aboard the Indomitable, Commander Elias Grant stood in a dim war room. His officers whispered nervously. "They'll find out," his first officer said quietly. Grant nodded. "Let them. The question is, will they believe us when they do?" He tapped the console. The display shifted to grainy scans of a wreckage field deep in uncharted space. Hulking remains of ships, larger than anything in galactic history, torn apart, consumed, not by weapons, by something older, something hungrier. The officers fell silent. They had seen the recordings before. They knew the name. The Erebus. Creatures that devoured flesh and steel alike. A darkness that adapted, absorbed, assimilated. Civilizations older than empires wiped away, and still out there, waiting. Grant's voice dropped to a whisper. "We're not building warships to fight the galaxy." His eyes hardened. "We're building them to survive the storm." Back in the Dominion, the Council descended into chaos. Some demanded war against humanity. Others whispered of alliances. But Zorth said nothing. His gaze fixed on the hologram of the Indomitable, on the memory of the human voice, cold as steel. And then he understood. Their greatest mistake wasn't underestimating human savagery. It was failing to ask the question. If humans weren't preparing to fight us, then what nightmare had driven them to such extremes? And worse, what if that nightmare was already awake? If this rising tension kept you hooked, share this story with a friend who loves epic HFY tales. The storm is only beginning. The War Council chamber shook with outrage. Warlords bared their fangs, spines bristling, voices rising in denial. "You expect us to believe this fantasy? That humans are preparing for some ghost in the dark? No, they are preparing to conquer us." Zorth's claws dug into the war table. His voice cracked like thunder. "I saw it. Their ship could have ended us in a heartbeat. They let us live, not because we were worthy opponents, but because we are not their enemy. Don't you see? Humanity is preparing for something worse." The chamber quieted. The Grand Warlord's golden eyes narrowed. "And what do you suggest, High Captain?" Zorth exhaled slowly. "We found out what they fear." The Indomitable's bridge bathed in warning light. Commander Elias Grant stood tall, arms crossed, as Zorth's scarred visage flickered onto the viewscreen. "You let me live once," Zorth said, voice tight with tension. "I know why now. I've seen the wreckage. I know the storm you're preparing for." Grant's eyes darkened. His crew shifted uneasily. At last, he nodded. "Then you know too much to turn back. If you want the truth, you'll have it." The lights dimmed, files unlocked, and for the first time, a non-human saw what humanity had carried alone for nearly a century. The Erebus. Recordings flickered to life, vast derelicts drifting in the void, crews reduced to twisted husks, ships peeled apart like fruit. And then the horror itself, a living warship the size of a continent, unfurled in darkness. Its hull is alive, pulsing, armored with grotesque appendages. Beams of energy bent away harmlessly, missiles dissolved mid-flight, and when it struck back, ships crumbled in seconds. Crews screamed as their air turned to poison. Zorth's breath caught. This wasn't war. It was exterminated. Grant's voice was low, steady. We call them the Erebus. They adapt. They consume. They erase. And they're coming. The revelation spread like fire. Across the galaxy, whispers grew into panic. Some denied it. Some prepared. But humanity did not waver. Their fleets multiplied. Colonies became fortresses. Soldiers drilled with grim determination. And then, on a cold dawn in deep space, the shadows moved. It began as static, a distortion on long-range sensors. Then, the void tore open. The Erebus arrived. Dozens, hundreds, living warships drifted into known space, their hulls adorned with skeletal remains. The largest loomed at the center, eclipsing the stars themselves. The galactic armada assembled, thousands of ships from dozens of species, united in desperation. Human dreadnoughts formed the vanguard, black and unyielding. Viridian cruisers flanked them. Telleri swarm fleets swirled at the edges. And on the bridge of the Indomitable, Zorth stood beside Grant. "Positions ready," an officer cried. Zorth swallowed hard. "Do you always face death this calmly?" Grant's lips curved into something between a smile and a snarl. "No, we face it loudly." The Erebus surged. Fire filled the void. Human railguns roared, tearing enemy hulls apart. Plasma lances carved through the dark. Missiles warped space, shattering shields. For the first time in history, the Erebus staggered. But they adapted. Beams bent away, hulls hardened. Swarms of biomechanical horrors erupted, latching onto ships, tearing them apart from within. Allied fleets collapsed in minutes. "The left flank is collapsing." Grant's jaw tightened. "Hold, hold." A Viridian dreadnought exploded in fire. Telleri swarms screamed over comms before vanishing into silence. Still, humanity fought. Their voices were raw with fury. Mara Levin clung to her console, blood streaking her face. "Captain, if we pull back now—" Grant cut her off. "We die later. If we stand now, we live forever." The Indomitable surged forward. Shields flared under Erebus fire. Its guns thundered again and again until the hull shook with exhaustion. The battle turned to slaughter. Ships vanished in blossoms of fire. Still, humanity refused to kneel. Grant's voice thundered over the comms. "Release the exo-troopers." Pods tore free, streaking toward Erebus hulls. They burst open. Cybernetic soldiers born from humanity's fallen spilt forth. Titans of vengeance. They ripped into the enemy with fury. Even the Erebus struggled to contain. Zorth's voice trembled. "You turn your dead into weapons." Grant's reply was steel. "We turn sacrifice into survival." The void burned with chaos. The Erebus reeled, their forms scarred. But the cost was devastating. Entire fleets gone, human ships bleeding fire. The Indomitable screamed under the strain. Alarms blared, bulkheads groaned, the reactor near collapse. Grant gripped the rail, voice steady. "This ship doesn't fall, not while I breathe." Mara turned, tears cutting through soot. "Captain, if we stay, we'll burn with it." Grant met her gaze, and for one heartbeat she saw not a commander, but a man carrying the weight of his species. "Then we burn bright enough for the galaxy to see us." The Erebus flagship loomed, vast, terrible. The Indomitable scarred and broken, drove straight towards it. Engines screamed, weapons unleashed their final fury, sparks rained across the bridge. And then, impact. Light consumed the void. The last thing Zorth remembered was Grant's voice, steady and unyielding as fire rose around them. Humanity kneels to no one. The screen went black. But in that silence, the shadows still moved. If this gave you goosebumps, smash that like button and drop a comment about humanity's defiance. The fight is far from over.
The fire of the Indomitable's last charge lingered in the void, a scar against the endless dark. Where once the human warship had stood, there was only wreckage, shattered armor, drifting embers, the fading echo of a ship that had refused to kneel. Silence followed. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then the Erebus flagship shuddered. The blast had torn through its adaptive core, rupturing parts of its monstrous frame. It faltered, twisting in the void like a wounded beast. The united fleet seized the moment, pouring fire into the breach, striking with every last ounce of fury they possessed. The Erebus fell back, not destroyed, not ended, but slowed. For the first time in known history, the nightmare had been wounded. In the aftermath, the price became clear. Thousands of ships gone, entire fleets reduced to scattered debris, and humanity had lost its pride, its spearhead, its Indomitable. Yet something strange rippled through the survivors. The Varians spoke of courage instead of savagery. The Talari, who once mocked humanity's recklessness, now whispered of their resilience. Even the coldest warlords of the Dominion admitted it. The humans had fought not as conquerors, but as guardians standing against the abyss. Mar 11 lived. Pulled from the wreckage by search teams days later, she carried scars on her skin and fire in her eyes. Wherever she walked, soldiers stood straighter, for she had been there, on the bridge, when humanity refused to yield. And High Captain Zorth, once certain of his species' supremacy, returned to his people forever changed. He told them the truth. Humanity was not reckless. Humanity was not weak. Humanity had seen the darkness first and prepared when no one else would. Across the stars, whispers grew into conviction. The humans were no longer the unruly upstarts clawing for a place at the table. They were something far more dangerous and far more vital. They were the spark, the defiance that refused extinction, the species that stood at the edge of the abyss and said, "Not today." The Erebus would come again. Every analyst, every warlord, every survivor knew it. The battle had been a reprieve, not a victory. The shadows still moved. The storm still gathered. But now, for the first time, the galaxy was not divided. Fleets trained side by side. Knowledge was shared. Fortresses rose on the borders of known space. And at the heart of every meeting, every council, every desperate plan, one name was spoken with reverence: humanity. They had bled for a galaxy that mocked them. They had sacrificed without hesitation. And in that sacrifice, they had earned something greater than fear. They had earned respect. One night, on a quiet station orbiting Earth, Mara stood by a viewport. The stars glimmered, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the Erebus lurked. Somewhere out there, the next battle waited. She touched the glass, her voice a whisper. "You wanted to burn bright enough for them to see us, Captain. You did." Behind her, cadets trained in the halls. Children grew under banners marked not with conquest, but with unity. Across the galaxy, species remembered the ship that had given everything to prove that the void could be fought.
And in the silence of the stars, a single truth endured. Humanity would never be forgotten. Because, in the face of extinction, humanity became the fire. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more epic HFY tales, and share this video so others can feel the spark of defiance.